Welcome back to the FTN NFL Draft Team Preview Series. I'm your host, Mike Randle. You can follow me on Twitter at RandleRan. I am Chief Content Officer here, and we are dedicated to giving you insight into each of the 32 NFL teams. And I have one of my go-to people today from ESPN, the great Mike DiRocco. You can follow him on Twitter at ESPN DiRocco. He is going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that is certainly on the rise after winning the division and giving us some tremendously exciting times in the playoffs as well. Mike, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, second time here in terms of the AFC South when it's been, structured like that the Jaguars have won it. But I will tell you this, coming into last year, I had a big argument with one of my relatives. He bet on Trevor Lawrence being MVP this year. And I said, you can't see that coming. Well, I'll tell you this. I think he and the Jaguars are going to be very hot prospects coming into 2023. Just a great year in 2022, I would say.
Yeah, I think a great year from November 1st on, because that first part of the season and, 0-5 in October, things kind of looked a little bit shaky for this team and a little bit shaky for Trevor Lawrence too. But, that second half of the season, he really came on. From November 1st to the end of the regular season, he was ranked second in the NFL in passer rating, second in completion percentage, 15 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. So a really, really strong surge for Trevor. Playoffs, played pretty well in the playoffs too. So yeah, I mean, the arrow's pointing up for him and the Jaguars. So I don't know if I would have made that MVP bet on Trevor Lawrence, but if the bet was he'll finish top 7, top 8 in the NFL as a quarterback, then I probably would take that now. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my argument. They were saying value, and of course they saw improvement, and certainly that's what happened here with the Jaguars. But talk about as we head into next year, obviously Calvin Ridley is the first name I want to mention here. Really solid weapons on offense, the development of Travis Etienne, offensive line played well. But what do you think Ridley here joining the team, and how do you see the other offensive weapons? I know there's some questions with Evan Engram because this is an explosive Jaguars offense here, balanced attack, but Lawrence and Peterson together, this team can really do some things on offense.
Yeah, it's got the potential to be one of the best in the league. But the big question mark, you mentioned Ridley, I don't think anybody here knows what they're getting out of him. If he's cleared, and that's what the expectation is, and he plays in the season opener, it'll be 23 months between games for him. So are you getting the 2020 Calvin Ridley, or are you getting the 2021 Calvin Ridley that wasn't as effective? A 2-year layoff is really, really something that, you can't overlook that. Now, granted, he's not a quarterback. I don't think we'll see the same kind of struggles that we saw Deshaun Watson have in his return after his long layoff. But, there's no denying Calvin Ridley's talent. And he gives Trevor Lawrence a legit number one. Put him on the outside edge. That allows you to keep Christian Kirk, who had a career year, in the slot more, where he's really at his best. And then now all of a sudden you've got big-time playmakers outside, inside. Zay Jones has been an underrated signing, didn't really generate as much, publicity as Christian Kirk did, but certainly caught over 80 passes, career high. It was funny, career highs in catches and receptions for Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Engram last year. And Ingram's numbers were franchise records, single-season franchise records for tight ends. So if they bring him back, if Calvin Ridley is the player that they think he can be, or think he was, or that he was and think he will be, then that's a really, really potent offense. And it's going to be a hard out for teams to stop that group.
Yeah, let's look at the defensive side of the ball now. Like you said, offense, that's an incredible stat about the career highs. How do the Jaguars attack defense? They ranked last year 13th overall in DVOA in team defense here. Obviously, or 26th rather overall in defense. Talk about the pass versus the run. How do you see the defense shaking out this year in 2023?
I think the same questions we had about the defense going into the year last year are the ones that we'll have this year. Look, if you want to win in the AFC, you have to deal with Mahomes and Herbert and Burrow and Allen and Lamar Jackson, and now maybe Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I mean, you've got to stop the pass. You have to be able to rush the passer, and you have to be able to cover. And the Jags weren't very good at either. Rushing the passer last year, disappointing season for Trayvon Walker, the number 1 overall pick. Just a strange decision to take a guy first and then move him to a position he never played. Very raw as a pass rusher. So they really weren't effective at getting home. They got a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, but they didn't really get home. And that was a big issue. So I think that has to be an area that they attack this year. And, corner is another area that Shaquille Griffin, back injury, really wasn't playing well. He's not going to be back most likely. And, now all of a sudden you've got Tyson Campbell on one side, Darius Williams, who you signed to play the nickel, but is really actually a better outside corner. So do you keep him outside? Do you try and find another nickel? What do you do? I think if you're ranking the needs on defense, it would be those two positions, corner and pass rusher, and then beefing up the interior of that defensive line as well. There's still some question marks about those two young linebackers and Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma. Not a really good season for Devin Lloyd. Hot start, but really kind of struggled and got lost with all the motions and eye candy that was going on there. He's got to really settle down in that area. That's a big problem for him. So, look, this offense could be good enough to overcome that defense. And I think we've seen in the NFL these days, you don't need an elite defense to win, but you need a defense that can at least create some pressure. And you look in the Super Bowl, and that's all the Eagles, who led the NFL, I think with 70 sacks. Mm-hmm. They didn't get home. They didn't get Patrick Mahomes down once. And what happens? You lost the game. So you've got to at least be able to create pressure, and that's where their biggest weakness is.
Yeah, that's the key. Against the run, 11th best here per DVOA, 30th, so third worst against the pass. That really is going to be the key because you want to balance it. And, when we turn to the draft, now the Jaguars have 9 picks this year. I believe they have the 24th overall because Miami, of course, had to give one of their picks back. So only 31 picks here in the first round. My question is, what is the focus? Obviously defense, but I am curious, Mike, what do you think about Travis Etienne moving forward? Is he a player you think they can rely on in the backfield as a workhorse role? Obviously explosive, dynamic. What do you think their focus is in terms of offense? I think wide receiver, they're solid, but what do you think defense, running back? How are they going to handle the draft here with really a nice cadre of 9 picks?
Yeah, I do think if you look at the mock drafts that are the real early mock drafts, it's all over the place. I mean, they've got them taking receivers and defensive tackle, some tight ends as well. And I just don't see that as being the way they're going to go with that first pick. I think it's going to be either a corner. If one of the corners that they really like is there, I think they snatch that kid up. Maybe the kid from Georgia, Keely Ringo, or the kid from Oregon, Christian Gonzalez. If they can fall, I think they'd snatch those two guys up without question. If there's an edge rusher there, maybe that's the way they go because they have to boost that pass rush like we talked about. But, I think the thing about Travis Etienne is they really like him. He wasn't as involved in the pass game as we all thought he would be, but I don't know that that's going to be a problem, especially if Ridley's there. They've got enough weapons in the pass game. But the thing is he didn't have a full offseason. His first offseason was as a rookie, and then he gets hurt, Liz Frank injury. So his offseason last year was just rehabbing from the Liz Frank injury. So this is his first NFL offseason. They've given him a list of stuff he's got to work on: ball security, he's got to work on his conditioning, and he's got to work on his, strength and durability. He takes a lot of big hits. So there's a concern there about him being a guy that is going to get injured. Now, he made it through the whole year. No real problems at all in terms of durability, but we all know what that position is. So I do think they address that spot, but I think it'll be later on in the draft. So I think corner, edge rusher, interior defensive line, I think would be where they would look in those first 2 rounds. Now, if one of those tight ends, the kid from Notre Dame, happens to fall, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you go back to Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, they had Zach Ertz and they drafted Dallas Goedert in the first round. So, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they did that, even if they brought Evan Engram back, because you have to score in the league. Obviously, it's a quarterback league. It's an offense league. You got to score, and that would help them. But I do think they have to make that defense at least middle of the pack against the pass and in terms of the pass rush in order to have a chance to win.
Mike, this is great stuff as always. Thank you for a few minutes. I have one more question, then we'll get you out of here.
Sure.
What was your mindset in that game against the Chargers? I remember watching it live, and the Chargers have had this history of issues, but even at halftime, I just wanted to know, A, what you thought at halftime, and B, when did you say to yourself, you know what? I think we have a chance here.
It's funny because I had to do an ESPN radio hit just before halftime. So I didn't even see the first touchdown. So I hear it, and then I go back and I look, and I'm like, okay, well, at least they're not getting totally embarrassed. Then we get midway through the third quarter, and I'm like, they're going to make this a tight game. I kind of figure, Trevor looks like he's starting to get hot, and Trevor's a rhythm guy. He gets hot, and who knows what happens. And then we get in the fourth quarter, and I'm going to be time to rewrite now. Got to start rewriting. And like with 5 minutes left, I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. And then I went from middle of the first quarter thinking, well, I'm not working next weekend to, when the buzzer, I was like, I got to find a flight to Kansas City now. This is ridiculous. But that was one of the most surreal games I've ever covered. And I was stunned. And Trevor Lawrence mentioned this before, but I was stunned that nobody or hardly anybody left the stadium when they were down 27-0. Those people, I thought it was going to be like a ghost town in that second half, and it was still packed. And when ETN ripped off that run to set him up for the field goal, that place just went nuts. It's as loud and as crazy as I've seen it in my 10 years there, and that includes, that 2017 season. Heck of a game, man. You see a lot of weird stuff when you cover the NFL, and that's about as weird as it's going to get for me.
Appreciate it, folks. Mike DiRocco, follow him on Twitter at ESPN DiRocco. Mike, thanks for a few minutes here. We are really excited about the season. The Jaguars are going to be one of the main teams that we're talking about here in NFL, fantasy, all over the place here. We appreciate a few minutes. I'll have to check back in with you as we get closer to the draft. It's going to be right around the corner here, about 2 months away. We'll be ready to rock and roll. Thanks so much for a few minutes.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, Mike.